Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, December 18th, West Fargo City Commission meeting. Before we start this evening, I'd ask everybody in the audience to please silence your cell phones, except for emergency personnel. With that, please join me in a pledge of allegiance. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner George?
Here.
Commissioner Jardis?
Here.
Commissioner Simmons?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here. We have a quorum. As you heard, Commissioner Simmons is on the phone this evening. He'll be joining us as such. First order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been distributed in your packets.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item E is the approval of the minutes of December 4th, 2023. Again, they have been distributed. They are in the packet.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of December 4th as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the building permits. Planning and zoning has done their monthly report. It is in their packet.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits report as presented by Planning and Zoning. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order is the consent agenda. We have items A through H. They are in your packet.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Anderson. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, items A through H as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the regular agenda. First order of business is public comment. Madam Secretary, I'd call on you for the order of the public comment as they registered, please.
The first one that I have up is Christopher Mace. My apologies.
Good evening and welcome. Please state your name and address.
Christopher Mace, 517 2nd Avenue West.
Yes, sir.
This is regarding a trash service. I lived in South Haven, Mississippi about a decade ago for 5 years. And at the time when I moved into that city, trash service was much like what it was here. They'd pick up anything you wanted on the curb. Then came a mandatory recycling policy. Initially, the service was free and cost neutral to the city. A year later, the service was no longer free and mandatory. At the same time, the garbage service was upgraded to 64-gallon bins like we have now, and an automated truck would pick it up. Additionally, only items that fit in the bin would be picked up. So now, to support the new level of service and the costs that went with them, the prices skyrocketed for the trash service. A year later, there was public outcry, and the recycling became voluntary. The majority of the residents quit recycling. Garbage collection continued, with all the items still being required to be in the 64-gallon bin. The unintended consequences of this course of action was a failed recycling policy, and the residents decided to start throwing all their trash in the ditches. Our city's automated bin pickup also has some unintended consequences there's a larger amount of trash floating in the city right now, partially due to uncontained trash that's in the trash bins. They're not in the trash bags. Garbage truck picks them up, trash flies out. I know this because after trash day, my wife and I pick up a lot of garbage. My question is how likely are people in the future to go to the transfer station, go to a website, or register online to pick up items that won't fit in the trash bin? Or will they just deal with the garbage in some unseen way that we don't know yet? In conclusion, I'd like to suggest that we reassess our past decisions to determine future courses of action. Good decisions are based in good information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next one up is Steve Markwart.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, thank you. Steve Markwart, 725 15th Avenue East. I'm also here to speak on the sanitation studies and increases or proposed increases. And I guess my major concerns here are, as you look what happens, right now, our garbage is looking to take roughly a 20% increase. On the studies that we did, or that you did, that you paid out the $100,000 for, it came back, one of them was a 10% increase, one was a 15% increase. And all of a sudden, we're at 20. Government has basically given the elderly a 3.2% increase with Social Security. All of a sudden, that is not going anywhere for people any longer. With the numbers that were printed and were in the paper, it basically said we're going to increase rates from $17.50 to $21, which is $3.50. And that, of course, is a 20% increase. It also says then, in the next few years, next year, a 15%, and then 3 more years at 10% each, which brings it to a 65% increase over 5 years. However, if you look at the numbers at $17.50 per month in 2023, taking those increases by 2028, our garbage service would cost us $32.79, which is actually an 87% increase, which is outrageous. I think what needs to happen is we pay for tonnage. And I spoke with Mr. Anvig, and he said that's what it's based on. So if you have a 64-gallon container at $17.50 a month, they're talking updating to 90, or upgrading, if you would like, to 96-gallon container, which is 50% more, but only charging $2 more per month. I think that should be based on, and if you look at other cities, Moorhead especially, which people like to compare us to at times, if you take the 50%, it should go from $17.50 to $26.25 for that 96. Once again, nothing is ever free. Somebody's going to pay for it. The Chase vehicle is being subsidized by the people that don't use it. That Chase vehicle is costing, once again, according to Mr. Anvik, at least $100 per hour to run. Okay? Somebody has to pay for that. And so in that situation, if somebody wants to have extra garbage out, they need to pay for it. And I think that needs to be considered in what we're doing here as far as the numbers are showing and what you have actually done with these studies that come into play. Okay? And the other part I'd like to make note is that apartment buildings are not charged at the same rate as individuals are. They still have the tonnage that's out there. And so if you have a 100-unit apartment building, whether it be $17.50, okay, by 100 would be $17.50 for that apartment building. They should be charged the same amount. They're still throwing garbage out. I don't put my garbage out every week. There's only 2 of us in our household. I don't get a benefit. I don't get a break. I'm still charged. I think you need to look at the numbers you have here and be very concerned about the increases you're trying to take. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one I have on the list is David Withy.
Good evening. My name
evening
is
and
David
welcome.
Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. Thank you for your service. It's a big commitment, and we do appreciate your efforts. I have several thoughts to share. The first one is that in item D of the consent agenda, you've just approved something for March 7th of 2023. I'm not sure if that's what you really meant to do. On to other subjects. According to the 2021 audited financial statement, the sewage or sanitation fund had a balance of over $3 million. The 2024 forecast is for a balance of about $1.2 million. I understand the need to regain the balance to a workable number. But what I cannot understand is why expenses have skyrocketed, including a nearly 20% jump from 20 to 21 per city documents. I believe no one is carefully watching the finances. Nevertheless, it seems you may be determined to raise rates for sanitation. Allow me to make a suggestion. The water fund regularly makes money, including over $2 million projected for 2024. Why not give taxpayers a break by lowering the water rates by the same amount you intend to increase the sanitation rates? I'm intrigued by the different subject. I'm intrigued by the Wex building idea. I really look forward to hearing more. I could walk to and from commission meetings if they're moved there. Thank you for the opportunity to communicate with you directly this evening.
Good evening, thank you. Is that all the people that have signed up for public comment? All right. We now move on to the next order of business, which is item number 2, a public hearing for A23-4 Sand Hill 6th Edition, approval of the first reading of a rezone ordinance. Call on Aaron Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Bear with me one moment while I pull up the staff reports. All right. Thank you, Commission President, and good evening, Commissioners. Item 2, Sand Hill 6th Edition, is a request for subdivision and rezoning, including right-of-way vacation, street renaming, and subdivision variance. The requested action tonight is to hold a public hearing and to approve the first reading of the proposed rezone ordinance. Final action on the subdivision and rezoning is tentatively scheduled for your next regular meeting on January 8th, 2024. The subject property is a roughly 50-acre tract of land located west of 26th Street Northwest and north of I-94, which I pulled up on the screen here in front of you. All the property is located within the A Agricultural Zoning District currently. The applicant is Ocho Indy LLC, represented here tonight by Brevin Lancaster of Enclave Development, as well as Matt Prochniak of Moore Engineering. The overall purpose of this application is to establish development entitlements for future industrial development of the property. The proposed zone change would rezone the property from A, agricultural, to LI, light industrial, for privately owned lots, and rezone it to P, public facilities, for city-owned lots within the development. And I'll pull up another graphic here, apologies. To illustrate the proposed zoning amendments here in the subdivision. The proposed subdivision would include the platting of the property into 8 lots on 3 blocks. 5 of the lots are for industrial development. Those are represented in the kind of bluish purple color here. And then 2 of the lots are for regional stormwater ponds, which are the northern 2 green lots. And then the last lot is the land recently purchased by the city for purposes of interstate interchange right-of-way preservation purposes, which is in the southeast corner there, adjacent to the interstate and to 26th Street. The proposed subdivision would also vacate and reestablish public right-of-way to provide access and public services to the development. This next graphic included in your packet here illustrates some of the changes in right-of-way that's taking place as a result of the proposed subdivision. The area in red, for example, illustrates existing right-of-way that exists today, that was platted originally in the 1950s when this area was in the county. That area would be vacated. Additionally, some of the green area represents dedication of new right-of-way to accommodate essentially a loop road from 26th that would tie back into existing streets and infrastructure to the north. This application was originally heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission in February of 2023 and has continued to evolve over the course of the year. In early 2023, staff received several calls and emails from neighboring property owners and their family members regarding concerns over potential impacts to area residents that would result from the proposed industrial development here. Some of the concerns included the additional special assessments that would result from the proposed improvements. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting on May 22nd to hear from area residents and talk through concerns. A summary of the public comments received to date is included in your staff report, as well as any written correspondence that we received is also attached to the staff report as well. I will note that those are all from earlier in 2023. Since that time, since the time that the comments were received, the applicant has continued to engage with adjacent property owners who are interested in selling their properties. The applicant has acquired a number of adjacent properties, including the impending purchase of 204 Park Boulevard, which is the property for which we received a vast majority of public comments previously. Overall, staff finds the proposed subdivision and rezoning to be consistent with city plans and ordinances as outlined in the staff report. At their June 13th, 2023 meeting, the West Fargo Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of the proposal with conditions that the applicant continue to work with staff on the purchase of the right-of-way land, as well as the applicant submitting signed dedication agreement and subdivision agreement, which have been submitted and which are attached to the staff report included in your packet here. As such, staff finds that the conditions have been satisfied. Just a quick summary of those agreements, it does include the purchase of additional land for the regional stormwater ponds proposed with this development, and so also included in your packet is a purchase agreement for those lands to accommodate that transaction. Again, the requested action tonight is to hold a public hearing and to approve the first reading of the proposed rezone ordinance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. There is certainly a lot of detail with this one, and be happy to circle back to anything anybody has questions on.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Simmons, do you have any?
Nope.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to close the regular agenda portion of the meeting, and we're going to move into a public hearing. At this time, I would call from any comments regarding Project A23-4 Sand Hill 6th Edition, approval of the first reading of rezoning as presented. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue?
I'd like to say something.
If you would, please step to the microphone.
Stop progress. I'm not saying anything about that. I was just wondering, I didn't hear you mention.
Please step to the microphone and introduce yourself to us first.
Yeah, my name's Chris Gibbons, and I own 2640 Grass Avenue
Thank you, sir.
in Meadowbrook Park. And I didn't hear him mention my address. You mentioned his address, but you didn't mention mine out there, proposed buyout. Now, I have a lawyer, and we've been going through all this stuff, and I was wondering why my address wasn't mentioned. It's right on Park Avenue too, and Grass.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nelson, can you address that?
Yeah, so in regards to any purchasing of adjacent property outside of the boundaries of this subdivision and this zone change, those have been negotiations that the developer has been having, private entity to private entity. And so I would defer to the applicant on any discussions they've had with any adjacent property owners in regards to purchasing of their property.
Okay. So those discussions are all a part of with the developer. We have a representative of the development company here in the, would you like to speak to this too, sir? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Austin Morris, Enclave Development. I think why that may have not been mentioned in this is that this is a two-part plat process, but the purchase agreement that we have with you would be reference within the second platted process, but in the end, we're in agreement on purchasing your property as well. So,
Thank you, sir.
yep.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? Again, we are on A23-4, Sand Hills 6th Edition, for the approval of the first reading to rezone ordinance. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? The public hearing is closed. We move back into the regular agenda. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments to Mr. Nelson?
Make motion to approve first reading?
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of A23-4 Sand Hills 6th Edition rezoning. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you for the public comment as well. Item number 3 is a public hearing, A23-17, Sand Hills 7th Edition. Approval of first reading of rezoning that ordinance as well. Again, we call on Mr. Aaron Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo.
Thank you. So item number 3, Sand Hills 7th Edition. This is actually a very similar request to the previous item you just heard. The request overall is for a subdivision and rezone of the subject property. However, the requested action tonight is to hold a public hearing and to approve the first reading of the proposed rezoning ordinance. And again, or similarly, final action on the subdivision and rezoning is tentatively scheduled for your next regular meeting on January 8th, 2024. In this case, the subject property is immediately northeast of the previous item you just heard. So north of the interstate, west of 26th Street Northwest. The applicant is Ryan Rusted, represented by Matt Prochniak with Moore Engineering here tonight, should you have any questions for the applicant. Here again, the purpose of the application is to establish the development entitlements for future industrial development of the property. The property today is zoned A, agricultural. The proposed zoning change is to rezone the property to LI, light industrial. Additionally, the proposed subdivision would plat the property into one lot and one block for future industrial development. And then the Sand Hill 6th Edition, again, is adjacent to the east, and so public infrastructure and right-of-way that would provide access and services to this subdivision is contingent on the ultimate approval of Sand Hill 6th. So Sand Hill 7th is dependent upon Sand Hill 6th Edition. Overall, staff did not receive any comments specific to Sand Hill 7th Edition. Overall, staff finds that the application does meet or is consistent with city plans and ordinances. At their June 13th, 2023 meeting, the West Fargo Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this application as well. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff. The action or the requested action here tonight, again, is to hold a public hearing and to approve first reading of the proposed rezoning ordinance. So with that, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, any questions at this time? With that, we recess from the regular agenda and we move into a public hearing. Public hearing is for A23-17, Sand Hills 7th Edition. The reading is for the rezoning ordinance. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? I'm required by law to call 3 times, in case you're all wondering what I'm doing up here. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. We again are back into the regular agenda. Commissioners, we're in discussion about A23-17, Sand Hills 7th Edition. We're looking for approval of the first reading of the rezoning.
Move to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Simmons moves. Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of the 7th edition of the Sand Hills. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 4. We're going to call on our Matt Anbick, Public Works Director. The purpose of this conversation is to approve the purchase of a Vector truck. Mr. Anbick, good evening and welcome.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioner President, Commissioners. Tonight, we're looking for approval for the invoice of a Vector truck for our sewer department. It was part of the 2023 budget. We budgeted $700,000. The price of the unit came in at $680,889. So not quite $20,000 below budget. Just with what we've done in the past, so we've just approved it, but with our new purchasing policy in this last year, we need to bring it, with that dollar amount, bring it before you for that approval of the invoice. If you approve that tonight, we'll be able to sign off on the invoice and take possession of the vehicle from Sanitation Products. I'll stand for any questions.
What's your timeline for delivery, Mr. Anbick?
It's on lot right now, so whenever we have the invoice signed and get that over to them, we'd be able to pick that up.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Anbick on this item? This is an actionable item, Commissioners.
Motion to approve the invoice.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of the Vector truck for the total of $680,899 as described in the 2023 budget, which is $19,111 below budget. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Anbick. Item number 5 is to approve the sanitation rate and operational changes for the City of West Fargo Sanitation Department. Mr. Matt Anbick, Director of Public Works, will be presenting.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners again. This is just kind of continuation now, looking for approval of the sanitation rate and operational changes. We brought this before last meeting, just kind of more informational. So we have proposed 3 different rate options that we're looking at. The first option, I can pull that up if it is there. Nope. The first option, I guess, is it's a 5-year rate schedule with increases of 20% or 20, 12, 10, 8, and 5% each over those years. Our base rate in 2024 would be, for that 64 gallon, would be $21. And then in 2028, that base rate would be $29.34. And that would put our, kind of what we're looking for reserve levels at 2.1 million in 2028. With that option is the flat rate for multifamily housing, which is about 75% of our base rate. And then we'd have a 3% increase each year for roll-offs and 3% increase in 24 for commercial, 3.5% in 25, 3% in 26, and then again another 3.5% increase in 27, and then a 3% increase in 28. Option 2 is very similar to that, except for the rate changes a little bit for the increases. It's still a 5-year rate schedule. It's the increases at 20%, 13, 11, 8, and 5. So our base rate would stay the same, would be the $21 in 2024, but this would change our rates for 2028. We'd be at $29.87, and then our multifamily flat rate would be based off of those rate increases. The commercial rates and roll-off rate increases would stay the same as option 1. This would put our reserve levels just about 2.3, it'd be a little over 2.3 million in 2028. Option 3 is still that 5-year rate increase. I must add that. because it's not it should be, I think it's 17%. I don't have, I'll have to grab it because I don't have it up right now. It's in the packet.
Yes, that's correct.
17, 15, 12, 5,
Okay.
and 3.
Yeah, 17%, 15, 12, and 5, and then in 2020 it would be 3. So then in 2024, our base rate would be $20.48, and then in 28 it'll be, or 2028 would be $28.52. That would put our reserve levels about 1.9 million at the end of this 5 years, which would be in 2028. Of these rates, I guess staff would recommend the option 2 would give us the most, I guess, kind of leeway and wiggle room as we go forward on getting to that 5-year period on where we're at with our reserve levels in case there's any equipment increases or we need to add on to any buildings or maintenance of those buildings. Then with this changes would be the bulky rate options. We had 2 options that we brought forward with that. Option 1, it'd be that $30, and then you'd schedule those pickups, and it'd be you get 3 items for that $30. And then you'd be $25 per item or for appliance pickup and $60 for the free on appliances. Brush collection, we'd have $10 per pickup at the time. And then option 2 would be just $10 per item. We'd schedule that. And with that, it'd be $20 a mattress or a box spring. Since they take up a little bit more room in the inert landfill, that we'd have to charge for that. $25 per, thank you, Dustin. $25 per appliance and $60 per Freon. And then brush collection would be no charge. We also have the services in there that we'd want to approve too, as well as to up the compactor rate to $250 per pull. Still have the roll-off rental fee at $160, 6-yard rental fees at $60. We'd add in a $10 minimum commercial charge at the transfer station. For residents, it would still be free to use the transfer station. And then anytime we did a bin or dumpster change out, it would be $30. As far as operational, we'd like to combine Wednesday and Friday residential routes into just one route. We'd be able to be more efficient on Fridays, be able to do bin repair or actually start handing out some of these other bins. If people are moving to 96 gallons on Friday, it'd free up a couple employees for a few hours to do that on Fridays. It would also eliminate our double days, like when we have the holidays coming up, we can just shift those back one day or not, so we just go to the 4-day pickup. If that was approved and could go to that, Waste Management would do the same with the recycling pickup as well. For those rate changes, we're looking for those to go in effect on January 1. The service changes, we're looking at July 1st, just to give us enough time to get all that out and be able to tell the public about it, make sure everybody's on the same page, and not rush that changeover, just to make sure it was as seamless as possible. So we'd give that enough time to kind of get everybody used to the new rule changes and how they would go about scheduling those bulk item pickups. With that, I guess going back, our staff would recommend approval of the rate option 2 is what we're looking, would be our preferred choice, and option 2 for the bulky item pickup. That would be the $10 per item, and no charge on the brush collection, and any other appliances and Freon would be about the same. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Commissioners, questions? We're going to start with Commissioner Olson.
Matt, when we did a similar study back in 2019, but we didn't follow through with any of the recommendations, but you had done some calculations to show where our rates would be had we followed through. Do you have that at the tip of your tongue, or Logan? Remember, it would be higher than what we're proposing right now had we followed through with it, right?
Yeah, if we did a 5-year or a 5% increase from 2019 on, we would, I think currently in 2023, we'd have been somewhere like 21,
We'd already
30.
be
So
there,
we'd
right?
already be at what we're asking for right now had we done a 5% increase every year. So we're actually a little bit lower than that with what we're asking for now.
And that's not my point, that we'd be lower than what we would have had we followed through with this. We have to follow through with our studies here, because we can't keep going in the hole with our sanitation pickup and delivery. And just a comment about multifamily, like an apartment or things like that. There might be more units in one place, but we only go there once, and we can pick up 30 apartments at one time and dump it, rather than making 30 individual stops, and it takes less time to do that. So that's why it's a little,
Well, and they don't offer recycling either, is that correct?
Yeah,
What?
They don't
multifamily,
offer recycling?
yeah.
right, they don't offer recycling too, so, yeah. So it's a little different there. You can't really, you can't compare it. So, I'll make the motion to go with.
There's more
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Anderson.
I didn't
All
see
right. I've got a few questions, perhaps a comment. We'll see how it goes. But looking at this option 2, right now, currently in 2023, the multifamily rate is $13.70 compared to $17.50 residential rate, 64 gallon. If I do the math, that is approximately 78%. Moving forward in this option is you're asking us to reduce that percentage compared to the single family to 75%. I don't bring this up because I want to stick it to the people that live in a multifamily, but to keep it equitable, I feel that they should go up a little bit higher to cover that. And right now, with that option 2, their percentage increase for 2024 is about 15%, not 20% like single family. Through the course of the 5-year plan here, it's about a 63% increase versus our over 70% increase, in our being single family. I feel that we're putting a barrier with some of the service that we're going to be providing our residents by asking them to schedule pickups, to charge potentially for pickups on the boulevard. And with that reduction in service, we're also increasing our rates. And that's not something I feel comfortable with. So with that, I'll be done.
With that, yeah, that 1370, I know I deleted the one on the other one. I probably should have done that, because currently, right now in 2023, we don't have a flat rate. Right now, it's a $6 per unit charge, and then the building gets a rental fee, and then plus it's the tonnage fee as well. So then when we kind of just added all those in, they're actually, remember?
Multiple different depending on how many commercial service stops.
Yeah. So they're actually they are going up actually more than that 75% that first year, just because it's hard. Right now, we're not charging that flat rate. So when we go to that flat rate, it is about that $250. So it's not quite as much. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 12 something of certain apartment buildings, because that's why we're trying to get to the flat rate, right? Because it's so confusing on certain apartment buildings get picked up twice a week and are getting charged for 2, where other ones are getting charged for 1, or they're having a 6-yard dumpster, others have 4. This way, it's just a flat rate for everything. And we can actually right-size the dumpsters, and where we can either go, maybe we got to pick them up twice a week or just once a week, but we can actually make it where it works better for us to do it this way. And they're actually paying closer to their fair share by doing this flat rate.
Okay, I guess one follow-up question is, as it relates to the multifamily flat, the trash at these multifamily units and versus the revenue, and compare that to single family to see because if they're not at 75%, right, if it's costing less, we wouldn't want to charge them as much, right? Or if they're, for whatever reason, costing a lot more, we would want to make sure that we're covering that and other people aren't subsidizing that portion of the business. Would you be able to get down to that level of accounting?
I believe we
analytics.
could. Yeah, I mean, we could do that, but every month it's going to be different depending on, you're looking at probably every April and May, it's gonna that's gonna be way out of line because you get a lot of people that are moving out April, May. If they're students, you're gonna have a little bit different in the fall where people getting rid of stuff, and it might be different in the middle. That's why we're kind of going with that middle ground and that, just kind of that flat rate to keep it fairly equitable to the same increase as what a resident is getting. I guess, if that's something directed by commission, we can look at that and get that, with this 5-year plan, we can always look at it. I mean, it's always the commission's decision. If you guys want to look at it yearly, we can. It'd be nice to have that 5-year rate out there. But it always comes down to the commission. If you guys want us to revisit that because of the numbers that we find, we could do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner George.
Okay, I guess I have a few points to make. First of all, with the bulky item options, I guess that's where I want to go first. I've kind of changed my mind in what I thought about this initially. Now, I do understand that there is an additional cost associated with bulky item pickup, but as we said, that's an important service to our residents. They want to maintain that, but they want it to be as easy and simple as possible. And so an option that was brought up at one point but hasn't been talked about tonight and isn't listed here is everybody just pays an additional $1 and it goes away, essentially, like it continues to do by increasing that rate to $1 a month. I believe that would cover.
Yep, that would, but we would still look at doing a schedule. to
Agreed,
pick up.
so that would be the next thing then, is we get rid of the follow truck. With the new software, I believe we are able to build a route, because then the trucks going around would see that, hey, there's bulky item collection or extra pickup. They'd be able to see that and create the route. Still getting rid of the follow truck, which would be much more efficient way to handle it. So I think that's a option I'd like to revisit with the commission, is the extra $1 versus the pay per fee. And then they don't have to go online or make a phone call to schedule it unless they specifically want to. They could just say, hey, I've got some bulky items, can you come and get it? That way we're continuing to do the service, but I think more efficiently and a better way. When it comes to the scheduled fees, we had professionals working on this that we hired. We're not just making up these numbers. And, the increase in costs have significantly gone up. The cost per tonnage to go to the landfill has increased, and it has to be paid for. We're operating in the red. We have to do something. It's not like we want to do this, but costs go up, so it has to be done. So right now, personally, I feel more supportive of the lowest option to the resident as far as the increase, but then adding that $1 for the bulky collection. That's just my opinion where I'm at on that. The other option is, a lot of people have compared this to our water rate, as far as the water needs to decrease before we can increase sanitation. Personally, I think they are separate issues. Even though they are all utilities, I think they're separate issues. So something as far as the water rate goes, okay, people want to lower and reduce special assessments, right? I campaigned on that myself. How do you think we're paying for water infrastructure projects now in our city? It's with the water rates. That's how it's getting paid for. Instead of special assessing it, it has to be paid for somehow. So that's why our water rates are where they are. It is a separate issue from sanitation. So those are my points I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner George. All great comments. I tend to agree with Commissioner George on her assessments with regarding separating water and sanitation. I agree with Commissioner Anderson with regard to his thoughts when it comes to the increase with the multifamily thing. There's still a number of questions here. Then my other thought is that we've hired professionals, as Commissioner George said, to do this analytics for us and do the financial data. I've sat down with Mr. Anvik and Mr. Jacobson on these issues, and as far as I'm concerned, our professionals were better than their professionals. That's a personal feeling. So that being said, I would like to suggest that we do a 1-year rate increase, keeping the 5-year plan as our benchmark. But I think that with these increases that we're going to do, and again, the tipping fees went from $51 a ton to $55 a ton. Is that correct?
46 to 51.
What?
Yeah.
I've got that number in my head, and
Yep.
I can't. Please go ahead.
I think it was 46 to 51.
46 to 51, okay, and I'm thinking in the future. So, that being said, I like the point that Commissioner Anderson made with regard to the multifamily rate and getting more granular and figuring that out, okay? In the sense of getting a better handle on what that cost is. Commissioner George's point of separating these two, and I would ask that in one of the January meetings, that we have some additional information with regard to water. Now, I don't know how many in the room are familiar with this, but at the present time, the Garrison Diversion Authority, as well as LAWA, the Lake Agassiz Water Organization, is working on bringing water from the McCluskey Canal to the Red River, Cheyenne River, excuse me, either from the McCluskey Canal or the Missouri River. They've spent $50 million and they have a deep water inlet on the Missouri River. Just recently, we also got approval, and I say we, I'm on the LAWA board, to consider using the LAWA, consider using the McCluskey Canal, excuse me. So last legislative session for this coming biennium, for the next 2 years, the North Dakota legislature appropriated $180 million. We are asking the United States Senate through Senator Kramer and Senator Hoeven's taking the lead, for another $450 million from the federal government to work with this. The water supply project is $1,200,000. $1,200 million, excuse me. That's a lot of money. So, and at the present time, all the dollars from the Garrison Diversion Conservancy District, that $1 that they collect from everybody that lives on this side, is going into this. The state has said that the split has to be an 80-20 split, that locals have to pay 20%. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here with regard to water is this is critically important for West Fargoans to understand. Previous city commissions made a decision that we were going to buy water from Fargo. We weren't going to create our own water plant. A sound decision at the time, without question. Without question. But the problem now arises that whatever that split is whether or not the government gives us potentially $450 million, or whether we continue to get additional funding from the state legislature. Again, we were asking for $250 million this legislative session. We got $180 million. The point also being that $180 million is more money than we can actually put into the ground in pipe. It's a 72-inch water pipe that's coming across the state of North Dakota, basically running along Highway 10. So here's the issue. That 20% that has to be by local. Now, local is Fargo, Grand Forks, West Fargo, Horace, whatever quantity of water they're buying, and Moorhead is now at the table thinking that in low water years that they might need more water. They still have great aquifers, but with their growth, they're concerned about it as well. So when I talk about the 20% local, we have no idea at this point in time what that assessment might mean to West Fargo. And that scares the life out of me. Because I know on some of the other water projects in western North Dakota, their base water rate is over $50 a month. Okay? So we don't know if we're going to get the $450 million from the feds. We don't know what that quantity of legislative work has within the state of North Dakota as to how much money we're going to get. The state of North Dakota, in the $180 million they gave us for this biennium, did say in the language, there's legislative intent to continue to fund this at an 80%. We have 24 rural water districts that at this point are tentative to signing on to this. But Grand Forks, Fargo, and West Fargo, and Horace will probably be a majority of that 20%, just because of commercial use and industrial use that we have in our communities. So the point I'm trying to make here is we do have water reserves, and I respect the taxpayers thinking that's a lot of money that we have in reserve. But we have an unknown that we're facing. And the worst-case scenario, and I have testified with the North Dakota legislature and with the Lawwell Board, is that they cannot tell me on any given day what that rate increase might be. And I have told them that they're not going to tell us that it's $20 a month. So there's a lot of things in play here, and I want to be respectful to the taxpayers that in some of the communications that we've had in the past week with regarding our water surplus that we have, and it might be too high, but I want to caution everybody that there are a lot of things in play when it comes to water that are critically important to West Fargo, and we need to be cautious of how we address that. So we have a number of suggestions here. Commissioners, if you could wade through that and offer a suggestion of a motion. Maybe we move this into a future meeting, or we pick parts of this, or what's your suggestions? Commissioner Anderson.
Mayor,
I'm sorry. We have not called on Commissioner Simmons to speak. Commissioner Simmons, please, you're on.
thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess I understood, and I'm hearing everything you're saying, but nobody's talking about our aquifers. Why not?
We cannot draw down any more water from our aquifers. We're maxed out. Correct?
And when did that
Right now,
happen?
we wouldn't be able to get in, we wouldn't be able to access our wells because of two separate systems. We would basically have to flush everything out if we're gonna switch over to water. Right now, we wouldn't have enough capacity to actually even get water to the entire city by using our wells. So we'd have to go through the Cheyenne, or it's basically get it from Fargo would be the best option.
And do we not have the agreement with Fargo that they have access to our water rights on the Cheyenne River?
They do on the Cheyenne, yes.
Yes. Mr. Scott's raising his hand, Mark. Excuse me, Commissioner Simmons.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis. Just wanted to point out, too, that before making the decision to get our water from Fargo, there was extensive research and analysis done by a consulting firm, and it demonstrated very clearly that our capacities in our aquifers were very limited and depleting, which is why we had to face long-term solutions like building a plant or buying our water from Fargo. So despite the logistical challenges of actually tapping back into those aquifers, they are but a very limited resource.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Again, Commissioner Simmons, you're on if you have some additional comments.
Well, just all due respect, I don't agree with that, any of that conversation, because I remember when we did it, first of all, we didn't have a choice back then because it was either go with Fargo, because the watershed district was not going to give us any money to put up a water tower, and we couldn't afford it. But I do recall us having that those aquifers were actually starting to replenish themselves somewhat. So I'm curious, since everybody's saying we can't use them, I'm curious, has anybody checked to see how much water, when's the last time we checked to see how much water's in them? I'll bet we have not. I'll bet Matt has never done that, probably.
I have not. I would have to look into that a little bit more on that question. But I know if we would have to, it'd be a lot of startup to get back to use those again. But we could look into that, yes.
Mayor?
Continue, please, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I'm only referencing towards if we should have a drought, not now or any time in the near future, hopefully. But I'm just saying if we have a drought, that was the intent when we did this, was to, if we had to, we could go back and use those. That's why we have all those motors, hopefully still somewhere in put away, correct?
Mr. Envick?
We do. We've decommissioned some of those pumping houses, but leaving them sit, we'd have to run them. You're going to get that rust, and there's a lot of logistics to actually being able to get them up and running again. or on an annual basis. And a lot of that decision, I guess, was made prior to when I started, so I'd have to kind of brush up on that again.
Anything additional, Commissioner Simmons?
No, I couldn't hear everything you said, but that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
All right, earlier you referenced January 1st that these rates would go into effect if this were approved. Is that accurate?
That was the recommendation, yes.
Okay. Is that possible with it being 2 weeks away from January 1st and a lot of things happening year end? Is that even possible? And with these changes going into effect July 1st, are we okay with having 5, 6, 7 months of extra cost with none of the changes?
I did check with finance. They would be able to get those rates changed. And then I don't know, there wouldn't be that much extra cost. I mean, we'd assume to start changing that over and getting people using the scheduling prior to that, but we wouldn't actually have that hard cutover date until July 1st. So we'd try and start kind of rolling that out sooner than later, and then get everybody on the same page and then move from there.
Okay, so July 1st would be more of a drop dead date versus a starting date?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
If we would go to the 96-gallon bin, we don't have any in stock, so how long would it take to get? If you had to order, say, a couple thousand to start.
Yeah,
with.
we'd probably, if this is approved, we'd probably order a few thousand right away, probably January 1. And it'd be a little while before somebody would order those, but they'd probably be a week or two before we could get them.
Oh,
It's not that far
It
out.
wasn't months and months, okay.
3 months to get them. Oh, yeah, so 6 to 8 weeks till
Be a
we,
couple months, so that's why we couldn't
Yep.
start at day one, because we don't have all the stuff. Plus, another part of this is we're gonna convert over to front-end dumpster, pickups at the commercial and multifamily places, which will, again, make it quicker and more efficient and less injury-prone for our workers, too. I visited with the mayor of Fargo the other day, and he said it's, by going to those front-end loads, their injuries have reduced dramatically. It's so much more efficient, and that's a good thing we need to do, too.
we'd look at starting that program in 25. We'd have to
Right.
get the trucks on the order in
Yep.
24 and 25. Yep.
Yeah. If you look at lost days and injuries throughout the city of West Fargo, sanitation, their sanitation department has the most injuries, and it's very troubling. Broken legs when you read the small print as to what the nature of those injuries were. There was a point made by the first speaker we had this evening, Mr. Mace, that I found very interesting. 5 years ago, the city of West Fargo was being paid for us providing some of our recycling. We were receiving dollars. Now we're paying for everything to be recycled. And the point he made was very interesting is, with these rates and what we're considering here, the last thing that we would want for our community or our nation is for recycling to go away, And, quite honestly, there might be some households that have to make that decision as to what they're going to do. Of course, we're not charging for recycling at the present time, but it's costing us. And that's part of what we're calculating in here, is that we have to get rid of all of it. And again, 5 years ago, I know that I saw some line items where we'd get $37,000 a month, right? About that?
Yeah, it was quite a bit when the commodities were high at the time, yeah.
And now we pay for everything that we recycle. So, keeping that in mind, and again, part of the discussion to the public is that, as Commissioner George says, everything's going up, and we have to be respectful of what our residents think. So, again, I really believe that if we adopt anything tonight, it should be the one-year rate, and then I would ask Commissioner George, she's been great on working on this sanitation study with staff, to kind of take the notes that our secretary has, and if any of you other commissioners want to weigh into it, obviously, let's funnel it all through Commissioner George. But I'm not prepared to vote for it in the full contents of the 5 years. I certainly would vote for the 2023 rate increase, the 2024 rate increase, excuse me. But that's where I'm at right now. So depending on what the motion is, you know where I'm at.
If I had one more comment,
Please.
Mr. President. A lot of this is what we look for, and one of the things I know that one of the first speakers brought up too was, when that goes away, if people stop recycling or people are going to find ways to do something else with their garbage, right? Or that's where you're going to have the illegal dumping. I know it was brought up about the $2 extra for the 96-gallon can, and that was part of the thought process of saying only $2 for that. Is one, it takes care of the our guys getting out of the truck, putting that back in for that extra $2. More people would be more inclined to use that instead of paying that extra fee. Because if it's going to be, you put that $7 or $10 extra to do that, more people are going to look for other means of getting rid of that or taking it to the transfer station. So that was part of that when we factored in that 96-gallon to do that. And that's a lot of these options we looked at. One option I might throw out there is to maybe go ahead and approve the 5 years, but revisit it every year and just reaffirm it every year on a December. So going into that next year, we have that 5-year plan set in place, but it's based on, I guess, secondary approval in December of each year to do that. That way we can go through the numbers and the commission would have say again to make sure that that's what you wanted to do, or we could look at something different at that time.
That's a consideration.
Mayor?
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question, Mayor? I'm having a hard time hearing Matt, but I'm feeling that there's still a lot of questions that people are having. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Simmons.
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to table this
Could I
for the next meeting.
Could I ask you to hold your motion? Commissioner George had another point she'd like to make.
No, I just really had a question.
Okay.
I was wondering what the other commissioners thought about the bulky pickup at this point. We haven't discussed that too much, just where they're at, where other people are at with that.
The question, did you hear that, Commissioner Simmons?
I did not.
The question that Commissioner George brought up was, is there any consideration or discussion that you want to have insight on the bulky pickup line item?
Well, so what I don't like is it's like all these things are put together and it's like push it all through. I think some of this should be taken separately. And I have a problem also with the water rates, which I truly believe we should be looking at the same time as far as, the costs for the runoff and stuff. I just think this is all, I think there's still a lot of questions left. That's my point.
Okay.
And I'm not prepared to make a vote on this.
Commissioner Olson.
Just for your, I'm not in favor of adding that extra dollar to everybody, because then everybody's subsidizing that one person all the time. And just for example, my neighbor 2 weeks ago had a dishwasher sitting out on the boulevard. Last week, they had a water heater out there. They own a pickup. They could take it to the transfer station themselves if they wanted to, rather than pay the $10 if that's what we would adopt. But I don't want to have to pay and have everybody pay the extra dollar per month on top of these rate increases for the people who don't want to, you can only take it to the curb. I feel that increases we're still going to have extra trucks running around. We would anyway, bulky pickup, we would. But to me, how often do you really need it? And should everybody be subsidizing everybody, the people who use it? Some people use it a lot, but if we go to the 96-gallon one, there should be a lot less of follow trucks if we go to that way. I'm not in favor of tacking on an extra dollar. just so you know.
Very good. All right. Any other questions of Mr. Anvick?
I want to know where Robin's at on this one.
If we're increasing our rates, I don't want to see a reduction in service or an increase in the barrier to receive that service. So bulky, I would prefer to stay as close to how it is now as possible.
But we're not decreasing the service, we're still offering the
You're
bulk
increasing the barrier
barrier. What kind of barrier?
by calling or submitting something online. A lot of people, if they don't have time to go to a transfer station, like your neighbor, they might be working. People are busy. They may not have time to call and set something up.
Everybody's
it's
got
a barrier.
Everybody's got a smartphone and they can order anything off of Amazon at any time they want, so they can also make the same decision to schedule a pickup here. They order out pizza, they do everything on the phone, so they can take 2 seconds and do something like that. So
Commissioners?
Some people don't have
Oh,
2 seconds in their life to
Commissioner,
do that.
Excuse me just a moment. All questions, just a moment, please. All questions have to come through the chair. That's not my rules, that's Robert's rules. So if you're going to address a comment made by another commissioner, then let's please follow the decorum. Please. Thank you. Commissioner Simmons,
I believe I had a motion on the table to table this.
you didn't get a second, so, and I asked you to
Oh,
refrain.
I didn't hear anybody.
I asked that you hold your motion until Commissioner George could make her comments. She had her hand up. So we've done that, and we've had additional comment. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Simmons, you're on.
No, okay, I understand.
Go ahead.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, sir, you certainly can.
Okay, I want to make a motion to table this for 2 weeks. I'd like to make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? My first question is, excuse me, Commissioner, can you summarize? I know that your schedule is extremely busy over the holiday season, and Commissioner George is our liaison with sanitation and with this, so can we get it done in 2 weeks? Or do we have to have the second meeting in January?
I believe we would be able to get it done in 2 weeks.
Okay.
If it is delayed, I'd like to have just a little direction from the commission, if you'd want us to bring 3 options or just pare it down to 1 option.
That was my question with tabling it, is what is that going to accomplish? Is that just procrastinating the issue? Because it's not like we can get together and talk about it during the next 2 weeks. We have to talk about it here. So is tabling accomplishing anything, or do we have a specific direction we want Matt to go?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of, obviously, the public comment, every piece of public comment that I received by emails and texts to me have all been forwarded to Mr. Anvick and Mr. Jacobson, all of them. So your insight, your comments, your suggestions have been forwarded. And so they've received that. We've had the dialogue here in the minutes from this meeting. And so, again, we're going to rely on you. You're the sanitation person. You've done a nice job up to this point. And it's tabling, and if there's some common ground we should have here, I would hope we come back with one proposal.
My thought is, I think we should sit here all night until we figure this out, unless we have a specific direction for Matt, because we can't figure this out at home. We can sit here for the next 3 hours. Let's discuss this and get it done.
Okay,
We
now, just a
had
mo-
all the information.
For the vote.
Just a moment.
We've had it all for weeks. We've had a chance to look at it.
All discussion has to be towards the motion. I'm going to call on Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commissioner President. I just wanted to make a point of clarification that our next meeting would be January 8th. And so that is 3 weeks out. And so for the question you asked Commissioner George on her schedule, it would be January 8th, our next meeting.
So any additional comments has to be on the motion on tabling it, which your comments were. But just reminding the commission.
As far as my work schedule, I will be gone from the 23rd to the 31st for work. So,
Please note that, Mr. Anvick and Mr. Jacobson.
Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
thank you. I have no problem going out to the second meeting or whatever. I mean, I don't think there's a big rush. We have to it just sounds like there's a lot of controversy here, and that's all my point was by tabling, but everybody give them another chance to take a look at everything.
Commissioner George.
I'm just wondering, like, is tabling it serving a point? We've seen the numbers, we have the options. Part of the point of having these public meetings is to talk about this and figure it out. So I just don't understand what tabling it would do. We've already seen the numbers. The point is we need to hash it out between ourselves and figure out what we want to do, and that's what we're pushing back. So why are we doing that? Why don't we just figure it out?
Commissioner George, if, you know, you're busy till the January 8th, right? Is that what you said?
Through the 31st of the month.
Okay. Of December.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point being is that if we come up with another conclusion with your leadership and Mr. Anvik's, we can have another public hearing.
This isn't a public hearing.
We can have, if we're going to reintroduce a final of the combination of these things, we can advertise 2 weeks in advance for a public hearing before the second meeting in January. The public has to have some more, has to be able to see what this conclusion is, if we don't finish it this evening, as you suggested, Commissioner George. The public has a right to know that.
Then we need to give Matt some direction on because right now we don't, what direction are we going?
Do we have to go back and meet with Matt and Logan in the next 2 weeks to get more information for ourselves before we can make?
I mean, because what else do you need to figure out what you want to do? Why doesn't
Right.
everybody just say what they want and then we figure it out and we vote on it? I don't know why this is so hard. Like, just what do you want to do? Let's vote on it. Matt's giving us the information. It's there. We have it.
I have a motion and a second on the table to table this. The discussion has to be on that motion at this time. And I'm letting you all have kind of a little free will here, but shame on me. So, is there any more discussion on the motion to table this? Hearing none, all those in favor of tabling this at this time, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Passes on a 3-2 vote. Mr. Anvik, you have a lot of marching orders there to dissimulate. And Mr. Jacobson, if you would please, and please, all correspondence goes through Commissioner George and help her understand what you've heard and and then whether or not Commissioner George agrees with your assessment. And we look forward to the next meeting and report.
Can we just get a little bit of clarification on that? You want one option brought back? And then are we doing a public meeting for that first time, or are we just going for approval?
I'm deferring to Commissioner George. I'm looking at her.
I mean, I guess we can work on some more options. Some more options were brought as far as a 1-year plan and bringing that back, or a 5-year plan and revisiting it every year. That was an option. As far as adding the $1 or not to bulky collection, that is an option that was brought up. We could introduce that back. So I guess we have some more options we could bring on the table, is about the only thing I see.
We've had a public meeting.
So, right, there's been a public meeting.
Nobody showed up.
Right, exactly. That's what I see too. It's like we've kind of
Nobody
done a
showed
lot
up.
of this already.
I think there's been a lot more interest generated in this, and, you know, that decision can be made by having discussions about where you're headed with this. And once we get the report, I think that it'll tell us what we want. And I would highly recommend that the tabling of the motion is for the second meeting in January, just in case, for your availability.
I've got both of those January meetings off. It's already, my schedule's out.
The motion was to table it for,
Yeah.
to the next meeting.
No, I amended that kind of. We better go through the process, Mayor.
Is there a second? Is there, the second approves the friendly amendment, and the maker of the motion has also accepted that. The second meeting in January. Okay,
All right, we'll have that for the second meeting in January.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is District Number 1345, Sand Hills 6th Edition, Mr. Dan Hanson, city engineer, is presenting. It's to conduct a resolution of necessity in a public hearing to approve both a resolution of insufficient protest and a task order for basic services. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. 2 months ago, in October, we brought back the Sand Hill 6th Edition project as far as the public improvements to construct the utilities, the storm sewer system, ponds, and roadways out in the Sand Hill 6th Edition. That was brought forth in October. In November, we passed a resolution of necessity, which sets up tonight. That was advertised as a public hearing for us to discuss moving forward with that project or not. Letters were sent out to everybody within the district. There is a map. There's a map here showing the district is the dashed line, the improvement district. That is highlighted in red. And the way that it reads as far as protesting the creation of the district, the total acres of parcels in the district is 124.5. The total number of parcels in opposition was 2, which were owned by the same person that had written in. And the total acres of parcel in opposition was 1.41 acres, which represented 1.14% of the total improvement district. So that's why there is a resolution in the packet as far as insufficient protests. That doesn't mean that it just means that this project, the creation of the improvement district, is not struck down due to sufficient protests. It just allows for us to have the discussion tonight. And with that, I would entertain any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Questions for commissioners? Anyone? Commissioner Simmons, did you want to make a comment?
No.
All right. Any questions of Mr. Hanson? Again, we recess from the regular agenda and we move into a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this item? If so, please come forward, state your name and address. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Daniel Hazer, and the address I'm at is 102 26th Street Northwest, which is that those 2 parcels that are in red on the map that's up there. And it's good that the city's developing and moving forward, but I'm just in a little bit of a pickle because that's my residence, and I'm already paying roughly, I think, $6,600 a year in taxes, which I think is good and strong. And I think it's going to increase another $19,000 in addition to that from what I gather from the extra $250,000 in specials on those 2 parcels. I use that property as a single occupancy home or single family occupancy. And we have our own sewer water, so it's really kind of a challenge to be maintaining everything and yet paying all these extra taxes and specials. And so if there is, I don't have an extra 19 grand to keep paying for this. And I can't even rent it out at the highest market and I even break even. I'd be losing money. There's no way. I'm just wondering if there are any other options. I don't expect anything to be done here now, but if there is any way that a person can still live in their house without going bankrupt, it'd sure be great to hear of any solutions. Or I guess sell it is probably where I'm being forced into at this point, so.
Thank you, Mr. Hazer. Mr. Hand, could you answer the question that Mr. Hazer has posed to you?
Thank you, Mr. Hazer. The original project improvement district was petitioned by the developer for that. As we mentioned at a couple different times that we've been in front of the commission here, there were 2 entities outside of the developer that were included within the improvement district that were anticipated to be specially assessed because their parcels are adjacent to the project and receiving benefit from the project. And so those 2 parcels or owners were the Hazer properties, as well as the Sand Hills Archery property. The two properties that are in red are adjacent to a right-of-way that is intended with this project, if it moves forward, to have brand-new streets, sewer, and water extended along it. The benefits of having that, as well as the increased the stormwater pond that's going to be created, is at a size that if all the parcels within the development, including the Hazers and including the Sand Hills Archery properties, if they decide in the future that they did want to change it and develop it, they would not have to create their own stormwater ponding. It would be used by the main stormwater ponding that's proposed. So there is benefit being provided to that. The report that we had the consultant do the feasibility study, when they're taking a look at a feasibility study, they are not taking a look at ownership. They're taking a look at what improvements are we going to construct, who's benefiting from it, and equally assessing those dollars to the benefiting properties. So the number that was placed on Mr. Hazer's property was one that was equitable to the same amounts that would be placed on the Ocho Indy properties. The thing is, if we, and Mr. Hazer pointed out properly that tonight he's not looking for an answer on how we can reduce things or things like that. But that being said, if there was some form of a benefit that was given to decrease the specials to that property, it would be right adjacent to the developer's property that is getting those specials, which would create an advantage for future development. Granted, I do recognize his point that he's using it as a single-family residence property right now, but it is being surrounded by development. So,
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioner George.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Wasn't that supposed to be part of the property that was going to possibly be purchased by the city for that right-of-way?
So there's two different areas that we were looking for to be purchased, the city to purchase for the future 26th Street right-of-way. The first properties are what I'm highlighting right here, which we actually have purchased from Ocho Indy. That purchase happened this past month. And the second one, which I was in front of this commission and I asked for permission to negotiate with the Hazers for the purchase of their property as well. And I was approved to enter into those negotiations. And Mr. Hazer and his father, Mr. Hazer, and we've had a number of very constructive conversations, both of us at the table with mutual interest of providing a solution.
On this property?
On this property that's in red as well. So I have had discussions about the city purchasing that for future right-of-way, as recently as this afternoon even.
Okay, so, I mean, because for me, that's what I was assuming was happening with this whole project, because I wouldn't have supported special assessing a private property $19,000 to do a project that they don't want. That'd be a problem for me. So I guess I'm confused for them too, if that is not their intention to sell, because that affects my vote. If they're not intending to sell and they want to keep it as a residence versus if they're going to sell it anyway and then not be assessed at $19,000, I mean, that kind of matters.
Where we're at with our negotiations, if you don't mind me sharing, Dan, is we were looking to get an appraiser to go to their property and provide us a market value of what their property is worth. There is some interest in selling the property, but it's what do we offer for it? We have a dollar amount that we offered Ocho Indy, which is a little different because Ocho Indy had barren property and we were just buying land value. Mr. Hazer and his father, they both have parcels that actually have their homes on them. So there's more value to them for these properties than just a flat green space. And so we want to make sure that if the city is going to potentially purchase the property, that we actually get what is the fair market value for their property, because we have an assessed amount, but typically if a person is going to market their property, they like to use the fair market value and not the assessed rate. And so my next step in the negotiations with them is for the city to actually hire an appraiser to go to their properties and report back to us what a fair market value is, and that would continue the discussions to sell. And I would,
I was gonna say, can I ask Mr. Hazer that? Like, if that's the intention here, if that's what he's thinking of?
Mr. Hazer, please step to the microphone. Thank you.
What was the question again?
If your intention is to potentially be willing to sell for whatever value you believe with the city and work with the city, is that something you think you
Yeah.
do intend to do?
Yeah, that's the direction we're moving in. I just didn't want to, I think things were going to happen maybe over the next 10 years or something like that. I just didn't want to get stuck with a hot potato in the meantime, figuratively speaking. But, I've been trying to talk with Bob Schmidt, who moves homes, to see if that was an option. He's really tough to get a hold of, and I don't know of many house movers in the area to talk to that seem to be good at what they do. And so we're trying to figure things out. There's just a lot of variables. Apparently, if there's a lot of utility lines to move, it's more expensive than the homes are even worth. Just lots of variables we're trying to get up to speed on. This is not my strength. And so we're looking at that, or maybe just selling it and abandoning what's there. We're just trying to get at options and prices. And unfortunately, when we look at what we have in terms of square footage and home value, the properties are well maintained. And the house on the bottom left just had a very expensive remodel several years ago. And so we're looking at what we can move into versus what they're offering. We really can't take the money and move into something similar, realizing we're not going to have as many square feet, but it's just we're a little bit off on the valuations with what's going on right now. So, but we're still working on that. Yeah.
The Schmidt firm is very busy moving things for the diversion.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's probably why you haven't been able to hook up with them. And so, as Mr. Hanson stated, there's the valuation that value that the Hazers have for their domestic dwellings and outbuildings that are on these properties. To them, they're assets. To us, as looking to buy the land, they're
It's a
liability, if you will, because they'll have to be removed. And that can be spendy as well. So continue with the negotiations, Mr. Hanson. We're delighted that Mr. Hazer's here this evening and express his concerns for this, because we're concerned for you as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner George.
He brings up a good point, though. He doesn't want to get stuck with that $19,000 bill, though, if negotiations take years. I mean, do we have a timeline in those negotiations on what we're thinking?
We just met today, came up with the conclusion that we were going to hire an appraiser to give us a value for the property. The way that this project, if it moves forward, would be move forward. The construction would happen in 2024. The assessments wouldn't be certified until the fall of 24, which would go on the tax rolls in 2025, which would be the first year of his payments that he had calculated to be the $19,000. So we have about a little over a year before the payments come due. The one thing that we did discuss is that if there is a mutual agreement that we would purchase the property from him, we don't need the functional use of that property for our interchange until the interchange happens. So one of the things that we did offer was potentially, because everything is a negotiation, it might be that where we purchase the property, but also agree to let them live there for 3 years as they find reasonable accommodations elsewhere. So that would, if we purchase the property, we assume the specials, they would not have those payments or specials, and they would have some time, 2 or 3 years or whatever we negotiate for them to move.
Okay, that would make me feel much better about that.
Any additional comments, commissioners?
Are we still in the?
We're still in the public hearing?
We're still in the public
Yeah.
hearing.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to in the public hearing on item 1345, Sand Hill 6th edition? Please to come forward.
David Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. I'm just here thinking there might be more value being put out there. He didn't ask for the value. The developer asked for the value. Why isn't the developer paying for all this? He's not asking to tap into the new lines or anything else. He didn't ask for it. But the developer wants him to help pay for it. I just think that's wrong. I'm just one taxpayer. I just think it's wrong.
I agree with you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this issue? Public hearing is closed. We're back on the regular agenda. Commissioners?
Well, I'm looking at the history. We've been working on this since May 1, and we've approved it all to this point. And this is just another step in the whole process, right?
That's correct. If we do not move forward with this, with the improvement district, creating the improvement district, or the improvement district, I say, is created. If we move forward with this project, then the next step is to get the engineers starting to do the design of the plans and specifications and move forward. If we do not move forward, then basically the project comes to a halt as far as the progress for getting towards design and bidding.
I'll make a motion to approve the project.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the District Number 1345 Sand Hill 6th Edition, to conduct a resolution of necessity in a public hearing to approve both the resolution of insufficient protest and a task order for basic services. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner George?
I want to support this 100%, but is there any way to protect the Hazer property a bit on this? Like, with this motion, is there anything that can be put in it or added or anything? Because I just don't think it's okay to stick a private residence with this.
Commissioner Hanson?
I would say that this motion does not assess their property. This motion moves forward towards the plans and the specifications, and it just basically says we have not received sufficient protests for the creation of the improvement district. Now, moving forward, there are some outs for the Hazers. If we do come to an agreement to purchase their property, then that would be something that they would be agreeable towards, and it would be mutually beneficial to both parties. That would be one out. The other thing is that eventually the project gets constructed, the special assessments are determined, and then it goes to a special assessment committee, and at that point is when they can protest the special assessments. Tonight is not a protest of special assessments. It's for to show that we did not have sufficient protests for the creation of the district. So there is an opportunity for the Special Assessment Commission as well as this body to make adjustments in the final assessments.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying is, historically, that doesn't always.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries on a 4-1 vote. Item number 7 is sanitary lift stations system rehabilitation, sanitary SA 11, 30, 31, and 36. Mr. Hanson, City Engineer. Of course, this discussion is to create a project number 1349 to approve both an engineer's report and a task order for basic services and direct the engineer to prepare plans and specification. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. As it states in the commission packet, this has been an ongoing series of projects to update our sanitary sewer lift stations. In 2021, after it being identified as a priority on the 2020 CIP, there was a preliminary engineering report that was completed, and it detailed that there's 4 priority groups of sanitary sewer lift stations that the city wanted to upgrade due to their deterioration, their age, just things wear out, a lot of moving parts in lift stations. And we have undertaken the first 3 of those 4 groups of lift station rehabilitation projects. This project here is the final grouping of the last 4 lift stations contained within that report. The proposed work is for rehabilitating these lift stations. It's upgrading pumps, it's replacing valves, it's taking a look at the perimeter control for fencing, the driveways, the coatings, the things of that nature, just to make sure that these lift stations remain in good working use. If any of these lift stations stop working, it could result in potentially backups into basements until it's fixed. So it's critical that we do maintain these lift stations. There is, excuse me, an engineer's report that is in the packet where it shows an estimated cost for this project of $1.6 million. As we've done with the other 3, the proposed payment or cost would be paid for via the capital improvement sales tax funds. There are no special assessments associated as proposed with this project. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Again, the total being requested is estimated at $1,600,000, all capital improvement, sales tax, no assessed dollars whatsoever.
Correct.
Commissioners, your thoughts? Questions for Mr. Hanson?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the sanitary lift station system rehabilitation, SA 11, SA 30, SA 31, and SA 36. And that's to create a project number 1349, to approve an engineer's report and task order basic services, and direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Item number 8 is a lease agreement and police department expansion. Discussion. Mr. Dustin Scott, City Administrator, City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. Tonight, before you is information regarding 2 subjects. One, potential lease of the WEX building, as well as getting started on our on a police department expansion project. There is a lot of information in the packet here. I'll try to be brief and summarize it, and then we'll stand for any questions. Okay, early last year, in 2022, there was a space needs study and property condition assessment conducted for City Hall and the Police Department. This work identified the limited space capacity and a growing number of issues with our current facilities. At the time, our consultants and our police chief stressed the urgency of addressing operational and space needs of the police department, and in July of 2022, the City Commission formed a committee to further evaluate and develop options for City Hall and alternatives for constructing a new police and City Hall facility with rough cost estimates ranging from $70 to $100 million. That's taking into consideration about $50 to $60 million of construction costs and adding on their recommended roughly 30% for the design construction phase, pre-industry standard percentages. So again, when that committee looked at a new facility for City Hall and Police, they were estimating, our consultants estimating about $70 to $100 million. Given such a high price, we started looking at other alternatives and solutions that we could quickly address the police department needs. On August 21st of this year, Commissioner Brad Olson provided an update on the findings of the Building Exploratory Committee and the next steps in finding a solution for the police department. Upon further consideration, staff believes that the most efficient, timely, and cost-effective solution is to lease space for City Hall so that we can move our administrative offices and make way for the repurposing of this site for the police department needs. And then on October 16th, the West Fargo City Commission authorized a letter of intent to lease space for City Hall. I will quickly go through the general parameters of the lease that we've been able to negotiate. We're looking at roughly $575,000 annually in lease payments, with an additional $150,000 in annual expenses, including taxes, specials, operations, and maintenance. There will be initial improvements and fit-up. Right now, we are estimating about $500,000 in those costs. And there would be potentially future fit-up, but some of that would be worked out at a future time. Things like putting in commission chambers, fitting up some library space, whether that be a satellite library or a second library location. Some of those are long-term things that we could move forward with, but those efforts would be evaluated as we do move forward, and those costs would be identified and acted upon by the City Commission at that time. It's also worth noting that the previous tenants of this building have left over $200,000 worth of furniture that we'd be able to utilize. That is something that you don't find very often. So we would certainly be able to take advantage of that. From a financial aspect, we would, staff is recommending that we use general fund reserves for the lease payments and the annual expenses. That's roughly $725,000 a year. And then using our capital improvement sales tax for our initial improvements and fit-up costs. Again, that's the $500,000 plus what other future fit-up we would choose to do at a later time. If we do move forward with authorizing some architectural services for the police department expansion, we would be able to start honing in on what those costs and the funding model would be. But with our public safety sales tax, we would certainly have the ability to leverage that and issue a bond to finance those improvements that we would decide to make here. There is additional background information and section here on alternatives, but I'm going to skip down to the process and timeline. It would take roughly 3 to 6 months before we could possibly move in to this building if this lease would be approved. But we would be able to start working immediately on honing in on our plans, starting to schedule those services that would need to take place, things like installing cable lines, fiber, so on and so forth. So upon approval tonight, we would be able to commence that work. And right now, we would anticipate sometime in late spring or early summer to start moving into those facilities. The chief is looking at setting up a working group within his department for the planning of the potential police department expansion. Following, again, the approval tonight, we would start negotiating a contract with RLE. They are the consultants that we've been working with for the past year and a half, and the chief's working group would work hand in hand with our consultant to start developing plans and cost estimates. So with that, the staff recommendations are to approve the 5-year lease. Again, I didn't mention this earlier, but we would also have the ability to extend that lease up to 3 different terms. That gives us 3 different 5-year extensions, which really provides us a lot of flexibility in holding tight and staying open to other opportunities that may arise. Things like working with public-private partnership on a new city hall downtown, as an example, Getting into this space provides the immediate solution to start addressing the police department needs, but will also give us the ability to stay there long-term until such other opportunities arise that we want to take action on in terms of long-term City Hall. The other recommendation is to authorize staff to negotiate a contract with RLE to begin planning or further planning and preliminary design services for the police department expansion. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Commissioner Anderson.
Can you remind me what we're paying for square footage wise for rent for the space that assessing is in right now?
Well, I don't have the per square foot number, but it is approximately $95,000 a year. I don't recall what that equated to on a per square foot basis, but it was about $95,000 a year.
Okay, I think it was more than this 18. So are there, I know in discussions we've, when we're talking through this, that this is a pretty good deal that we're getting, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yep. I believe costs downtown are over $22 a square foot. Originally, WEX was, their initial arrangement was $20 a square foot. We were able to come down to $18.80. So again, I think it's a very competitive price, very efficient building, albeit it's new. It is still, relatively a general box building that has a very efficient layout. So yes, I think this would compete throughout the FM community in terms of price.
So in your five-year lease renewals, at what percentage of increase is that renewable percent?
Right now, the agreement is for a 10% increase per term, so basically 2% per year. So take the 1880. If we were to execute another term extension, that would be 10% on that 1880.
I wanted the public to hear that bit of information, Dustin. What's our protection if they decide to sell the building?
Right now, we've been able to negotiate the first right of refusal to purchase that building. So at some point in the future, if we decide that it would be cheaper to buy the building versus construct a new city hall, that would be an option available to the City Commission.
Is there a fixed cost assigned to that, what that cost of that would be?
At this point, not now, no. They didn't identify it. No.
Thank you. Commissioner George.
Just a quick comment, since I sat on the building committee. There's definitely the need for the additional space. We've outgrown City Hall, the police have their needs, so we have to do something, right? And it was very disheartening when we got that cost estimate ranging from 70 to 100 million. That was really kind of a blow, it's like, okay, what do we do? That's obviously too high. So I was asked at one point if I wanted to tour the WEX building. So I went there, I had a tour, I thought it was an amazing option. So that's how we came to the last meeting where we had the vote to, the letter of intent for the space, which I thought was a fantastic option after being able to tour that building, see the potential that it had, and, looking at this cost, it is significantly lower than what we originally thought we might have to spend. So to me, that is a huge win. It doesn't take a lot of, discussion to figure out that this is a much better solution. It's in a great location. I think I see so much potential with the potential with where this space is located. It's just off the interstate. Even when it came up potentially maybe a satellite library space, I absolutely love that idea. It'd be just in a great location for the low-income senior housing. Or we've got a lot of families with young children that might go there. I just see so much potential with this space, and I think for this cost being competitive, if not lower than competitive, I don't see how this is not actually a fantastic solution for the city.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Anyone else? Questions of Mr. Scott? Comments that you'd like to make?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the lease agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. It moved and seconded to approve the lease agreement and start the process for the police department expansion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye, and I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner George,
Aye.
Commissioner Steffes,
Aye.
Commissioner Jarvis,
No.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
No.
Motion passes on a 3-2 vote. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Item number 9, again, we call on Mr. Scott, City Administrator's Report. He has several items for us.
Yes, good evening again, and thank you, Commissioners. There was a late addition here underneath my Administrator's Report. As you can see up on the screen here, there is a memo from our Municipal Judge, Trent Barkus, to appoint an alternate municipal court judge. He has used very similar language as what the City of Fargo uses, but this is basically to have an alternate on retainer. And as you can see here, that hourly rate for those services is $137.50 per hour. With that, I guess I would stand for any questions. It would would be effective as of December 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Commissioners, you have any questions on this item?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the appointment of the alternate municipal court judge at the same rate as previously paid. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Scott, please continue.
Thank you. Next, I just want to provide a brief update on our search for finance software. We have been taking some time here. Our finance department and finance director Heidi DeLorme has done some pretty extensive research. They've even had some demonstrations from other cities that are using some new softwares. It has become very apparent that the use of a consultant to help with determining which software and the process in which you go by purchasing that software is really we're gonna need to rely upon the consultant to help us through that. If you recall, the Commission did authorize $100,000 in spending for such services. We are starting to put a package together to solicit quotes from multiple providers. We are hopeful that we will be well under budget, but again, purpose of tonight is just to let you know that we are moving forward and getting closer to that point. I will say that in talking with some of the other communities, this software is not cheap. So this will certainly be a large portion of our budgeting discussion when we start looking at the 2025 budget. But again, I am very proud that our finance department has been able to keep focus on this and is making some progress. Any questions on that?
I have one point to make on this. I had an extensive conversation with the finance director of the city of Minot at a North Dakota League of Cities, and complimented our finance director on the nature of her questions and the adeptness of the questions. And he really does believe that we're on the right track for a similar software package that the city of Minot chose. And part of their contract, I believe, was that they service that software for 10 years as part of the purchase package. So, initially when we see some of those numbers of what might come at us, we have to keep in mind that they are servicing that software and that account for whatever extended period of time that we choose to do. But I believe Minot took 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. Or my next item here, just a reminder on the date changes for our January commission meetings. As we discussed a little earlier tonight, the next meeting will be Monday, January 8th, and then the second meeting in January will take place on Monday, the 22nd. Any questions or discussion on that? No? Okay. And then last here, training sessions. I had indicated John Shockley, of course, he's not here tonight. And in talking with Sarah, I decided I'll tackle this one. But this topic is relating to some of the open meeting discussions that we've had. There was a request sent to the Attorney General's office on potential violations of the City Commission with, in respect to open meeting laws. And so in corresponding with the Attorney General's office, our attorney did acknowledge that we will be proactive and not only put together the agendas and meetings or meeting minutes of any meetings that were held, but also our attorney is going to schedule training sessions for staff and our commission, which we are hoping to take place in January. I don't have the details on that quite yet, but just know that we are working to make that happen. And our goal is to have those take place in January. And so we will be reaching out in the near future to start scheduling those. Any questions on the training sessions?
Questions on the training? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anything else for us?
That's all I have on the administrator's report.
Does any of the commissioners have any non-agenda items they'd like to bring forward?
I just want to make a point of clarification with the consent agenda. The date was actually supposed to be March 7th, 2024. I'm just not used to typing in 2024 yet, so that permit is actually for the.
Thank you, Emily. Please, Mr. Scott.
Sorry, I should back up. Correspondence, I believe, Emily, did you hand? Yep, Emily handed out something at the beginning of the meeting, otherwise nothing else.
All right, very good. No non-agenda items, commissioners? Does any department head have any non-agenda item they'd like to bring forward this evening? All right, Commissioner Simmons.
Motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We stand adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.